Welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Report. I'm Jared Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Well, mighty Joe, it's the off season. It's been a minute since you and I have combined on a Gridiron Report. We have spring ball just a couple weeks away now. It's almost March. Got some big things happening. The NCAA tournament, basketball, of course, and then spring ball, which is always a big deal to me. And we'll see how deep the Red Raiders go and how much they pull me away from spring ball. But I love covering it. There's a lot of newcomers, and that's been rightfully so a big talking point for Texas Tech. There's also a lot of returnees. So I thought we would actually spend some time talking about the guys returning. I'll have some videos about the newcomers leading up to and during spring ball, of course. But let's give some love to the returnees. Starting on offense, we'll do defense perhaps next week. But offense, I think a lot of it starts with Baron Morton, quarterback. Also, of course, Will Hammond coming back, having started a game, played in 2 games. Mixed results there. But Baron Morton was, I saw a quarterback, Big 12 returning quarterback power rankings. And Baron, I can't remember the publication, I'm sorry. There's a bunch of those out there. But in this one particularly, I saw recently, Baron was listed as 7th. And I didn't agree with that, especially looking at his stats and the amount of wins he's had the last couple of years. He was incredibly efficient last year. He is coming off that elective shoulder surgery, but he's posted a video, Mighty Joe, of him out of the sling and all that. So we'll see how much he throws during spring ball. I don't think he needs to suit up a lot. Even with Mac Leftwich, the new offensive coordinator, they do so much work, in terms of position groups and going over the playbook and in the facility, the brand new, beautiful facility, by the way. But what's your thoughts, pardon me, on Baron Morton and him returning a quarterback for Texas Tech?
Well, welcome return. He may be the only returnee on offense whose job is in no way threatened by a newcomer. To me, what really stood out with Baron last year was how much of a true gamer he is, how much of a winner he is, how much he rises to the occasion late in games when it's tough, and you got to have a last-minute, last-ditch drive to score points. His numbers were good. Very good, actually. He stayed healthy for the most part. He didn't miss any games. He was, banged up with the shoulder, but he was healthier. That was his healthiest season so far at Texas Tech, so that was a positive development as well. I just think that with Barron, you got yourself a winner at quarterback, and that's the most important thing, man. Is a guy who's going to win you some games, just through willpower, through toughness, through poise and competitiveness, and all that intangible stuff that coaches like to talk about so much. He's got that stuff. So, I've compared him to Rodney Allison. Great Texas Tech quarterback from the mid-'70s, early mid-'70s. Totally different quarterbacks from an on-field athletic standpoint.
Right.
Allison was a scrambler, deluxe, not much of a passer with Barron. He's much more of a passer than a runner, but the same sort of mentality and toughness. And so I can't give a much higher compliment than that. Yeah.
And then you have Will Hammond there, who did get some seasoning. He's going to have his redshirt freshman year this year. He is expected to be the heir apparent, but we'll see how that plays out. Like against TCU, in that second half when he was thrust into action, he looked terrific for the most part. And then in the bowl game, not so much. He did not look very good against Arkansas. But neither did the offense as a whole, outside of the 2 returning running backs we're about to talk about. And let's go to that. Running backs, Jacoby Williams is somebody that you and I both have been high on really since he hit campus. He was one of the first guys that stood out to me in fall camp. And every time he gets the ball, you kind of hold your breath. He's that kind of player. And he had a tremendous bowl game. He was terrific. Cam Dickey is more of in the mold of Taj Brooks. Doesn't really have that necessarily high-end speed, but he's fast and he's quick and he's solid. He's thick running back. He's already 215, 220, something like that. He's a good receiver, a good blocker, all those things. So it's a really good 1-2 combo with Williams being lighter, but still a good between the tackles runner who can always break one for a big run, Joe.
Yeah, you talked about kind of a small running back who's able to run well between the tackles.
Yeah.
And the name that just popped into my head was Ricky Williams, little Ricky Williams.
Yeah. Well, Ricky was the whole package.
He
Are you
was.
talking about Little Rick or
Not Texas.
Oh, okay.
Texas.
Little Rick, yeah, he was
Rick,
great.
Not Big Rick.
You're right.
Same sort of back,
Yeah.
It's just now popped into my head. But I mean, even before all these, highly touted transfers were announced at the running back position in particular, I was saying to myself, I'm happy with this running back room coming back next year, even in the absence of Taj Brooks, because of those two guys that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I thought right there, without the addition of the transfers, the running back was going to be a solid position. You weren't going to have a whole lot of drop off. That's hard to believe when you just the greatest or the
leading rusher, all-time leading rusher
in school history is gone, and you're not going to really maybe miss him all that much, potentially. So that tells you about how I felt about Williams and to an extent Dickey as well. When Dickey has got the opportunities, I've liked what I've seen from him too. But it's a couple of pretty good backs coming back, that's for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, just since you brought it up, this is about returnees, but Quentin Joyner from USC coming over into the mix. You have Cameron Valdez coming off the injury, so I don't know what you have from him. But even with those first three guys, I mean, that's a heck of a combination. And, I've asked new offensive coordinator Mac Leffers, because his numbers in terms of running the ball and throwing the ball, but his balance is unbelievable coming into Texas Tech. And I asked if that was a staple that he believed in, and he said yes. And he went into great detail during you could look it up on Tex Athletics, YouTube or Twitter or whatever, of their introductory press conferences, and I thought his answer was great. Exactly what I wanted to hear. That was really the one thing I wanted to hear from him. It's like, are you going to be committed to running the ball? Yes, they are. Yep. So, but they're going to do both. They're still going to throw it around the park, and they're going to throw it around to some receivers. They brought some talent in, which we'll talk about another time, but they also have some key returnees, and I think that starts with Coy Aiken and Caleb Douglas, and Douglas really came on late last season, Monty Joe. Really big target. He's a 50-50 ball kind of guy who wins it more than that, and I think he's only scratching the surface in terms of his yards after catch too, in some of those like screen games and those short passes that I think he has a lot of ability that, like, we're just barely seeing that ability so far.
Yeah, he's potentially a lead receiver.
Yeah.
In the absence of Josh Kelly, then he might have been that guy last year. Particularly the way he came on, and you described it very well, I believe. Definitely a huge boon that he's returning, and I thought Coy Aiken improved as well over the course of the season. He at time I thought he dropped a few balls earlier in the year, but I think he tightened up on that later. And he became something of a deep threat. I mean, he would beat people on a go route from time to time and leave people in the dust a little bit. So you got a couple of pretty good returning receivers right there to help as a sort of a little bit of a foundation for your receiving corps.
And then John Carlos Miller is a freak athlete, another one of those guys who, right when you walk in, you see him for the first time in practice, like, whoa, who is this guy? And he made some plays from the tight end position. He also made, or at least he played, some defensive and outside linebacker for Texas Tech last year, because he's just such a freak athlete that we got to find a way to get him on the field. I thought that was smart, but he is going to be one of the top tight ends. And they've added to that, but he's going to get a lot of play. I think he's going to be more the in-line tight end. He's going to help with blocking a lot, but he is such a freak athlete that they're going to get him. He's going to catch some passes. He's going to catch some touchdowns next year, Monty Joe. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I would expect his productivity to improve. I mean, he had to deal with a couple other pretty good tight ends last year. There was a lot of divvying up of the reps, and with the incoming transfers, I know there's still going to be some of that too. But I still would expect his role to increase, and I think you're going to see more out of him this year than you saw last year. And he's going to be a factor.
And then the offensive line is going to be totally remade. That they're bringing in a lot of new guys, a lot of high-priced new guys, which we'll talk about. We have talked about, and we'll continue to do so leading up to spring ball. But Vinny Scurry is a guy who really stands out. He was touted as your, like your best offensive lineman last year. He goes down with a knee injury, gets a medical red shirt. Is coming back. Is he back to that form that he was last year before he got hurt? Will he start at guard? You have a couple other guys in the interior returning, Monty Joe, I want to get your thoughts about. And I think the offensive line depth chart and position battles are going to be very interesting because they've invested a lot of money in some of these new guys. They brought in 3 of the top transfer portal offensive linemen in the country. So it's going to be that's going to be heavily contested. And offensive line has been something. It's been a main storyline for me for it seems like forever now. So we'll see if it's been fixed. But I think these new returnees are a big deal. What do you think about the other 2 guys?
Yeah, it was Sheridan Wilson, center, Davion Carter, right guard.
Yep.
I think actually those guys were, and again, it wasn't a great offensive line. It was just decent. It was okay. I think Wilson and Carter are actually maybe a couple of under the radar guys who actually had pretty decent seasons.
Yeah.
I didn't see too many troubles. The one gap, or the A or anything like that. And so, I mean, Carter, penalties were a problem with the offensive line.
Right.
A lot of holding, some pre-snap stuff. And I didn't see a whole lot out of those 2 guys. They weren't primary offenders with a lot of penalties. So that tells me, among other things, they weren't getting whipped a whole lot, that they had to try to hold on to somebody to keep from getting whipped. A couple, again, solid players on your offensive line, you're more than happy to have back.
Yeah. No, I think Carter, he got the JUCO exemption. There's all these exemptions now, allowing guys to play for 20 years or whatever in college. But, hey, you got to take advantage of the way the game is, the rules are written and all that. And Carter coming back is huge. I don't know if he's going to start. I don't. I mean, because of the guys they brought in. I think they had to have a real conversation about that. But he's been solid. He's not a big dude. He's only like 6 feet. He's kind of a bulldog, maximum effort kind of guy. And he's played a lot of college football at this point. So to have him as a reserve, guys are going to go down. I mean, guys are going to go down. To have someone of his caliber as a backup is a luxury. Quite honestly, Texas Tech hasn't had in a long time. Yeah. And in terms of Sheridan Wilson, his first year starting at center, he kind of surprised and emerged last spring and took over the position. And I was kind of like, oh, that's such a critical position. But I thought he played okay. I can't give anybody on the offensive line just great credit because I thought that was one of the major weaknesses, especially on they didn't allow a lot of sacks. They didn't necessarily give up a lot of negative plays. But here's where this offense needs to take another step in the offensive line. If it's 3rd and 1 or 2, 4th and 1 or 2, they know you're probably going to run the ball or do something like that. Seemed like Tech got whipped up front every time. 3rd and 7 and 8. Now, there were a lot of times Baron Morton hooked up with Josh Kelly and converted on quick passes, but the offensive line couldn't really hold up in big-time moments in obvious passing situations a lot of the time. And that's the difference between winning 10 or winning 7 or 8. You know what I mean? So that's why they've invested so much money. Talked to Cody Campbell himself about it. He's like, yeah, I wasn't lying. He went out, put his money where his mouth is, and now the offensive line has been significantly improved from a talent and experience level. So, but these returnees are a big part of that too, of what they're going to do on offense overall and on the offensive line. But that's going to do it for kind of one of our spring ball previews, talking about the returnees, the key returnees on offense. Mike, Joe, great stuff from you as always. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.